Nowadays, several luxurious and beautiful places around the world are contesting for the title of Sin City. However, for many people, only 2 settlements will have such a title throughout their lives, which we all know are no longer on the map today. As you have understood, it's Sodom and Gomorrah. And a lot of what you're about to hear today can send you into a slight shock, to say the least. So get ready. You're watching Flip Side of History, and today's topic is Sodom and Gomorrah, things you didn't know. So let's begin this episode. Where were Sodom and Gomorrah? Prior to talking about the history of these 2 cities, it is necessary to understand the main thing. Their very existence has not yet been proven by anyone on our planet. No archaeological sites have been found that could be unequivocally identified as one of these 2 cities, although relevant studies have been conducted. Sodom and Gomorrah are not only mentioned in the Bible itself. These cities and the misfortune that befell them are also mentioned in various ancient sources. These ancient sources themselves admit in their writings that the information about Sodom and Gomorrah was drawn mainly from the legends and beliefs of the inhabitants of Palestine, and these are, in fact, the same biblical traditions. Consequently, there is very little information about the history of these sinful cities. It is not known by whom and when these cities were founded. The Old Testament places both settlements in the Valley of Siddim, now completely flooded by the Dead Sea. The area near the body of water is marked as Eden, paradise. Before the flood, there were 2 cities on the banks of the river. First where Adam and Lilith lived, then Eve and the serpent. In other words, the east bank of the entire course of the Jordan has become the scene of devilish corruption. Modern traces, or is the story not just a myth? So we have figured out which part of the earth is encoded in the image of the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah. The approximate location leaves no doubt. Indeed. Now these are the remains of the Dead Sea, right? Its drying southern part. Of all the paradises, this was the southernmost and most climate unfavorable half. That being the case here, the water that once swallowed the settlements is already partially receding. Archaeologists admitted here by the Jordanian government have indeed found a lot of very mind-blowing things. Pieces of various minerals centered around the influence of the fire of multiple days of fires on the found ceramics. Wait, so it means that the epic scene of destruction did exist in one particular place and at one particular time? Since now it is the most developed area for the extraction of brine and mineralized mud, divided between the modern Israel and Jordan. More land than water, isthmuses everywhere, and part of the water area is already on the anchored shore. It is in fact there that scientists from all over the world conduct excavations. Now let's touch upon this: how the cities met their end. The Bible unequivocally names the cause of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as inevitable punishment from above, a rain of fire and brimstone. But this is not the only theory. There are even several mystical explanations. Tacitus generally accepts the biblical version of fire from heaven as just probable. Josephus speaks of a divine thunderbolt. Strabo, however, appeals only to real-world way of things, or rather purely materialistic point of view. Strabo speaks of earthquakes and eruptions of fire, in other words volcanism, and overflowing the shores of the lake, most likely the Dead Sea. According to this man's version, a significant part of the population of the doomed territory managed to escape, but the buildings and fertile lands vanished. Eratosthenes generally believes that the dead lands near the Dead Sea were created by the uplift of part of its bottom due to volcanism, and does not connect the, in his opinion, purely natural way of things with Sodom and Gomorrah. And nowadays, majority of population is driven by scientific approach. So modern scientists obviously are not making decisions based on mystical or spiritual sources or beliefs. The latest version out of all, published in 2021, speaks of the explosion of a huge meteorite in the middle of the 17th century BC. The immense power of the explosion is estimated at 10 megatons. Scientists claim that this meteorite destroyed several cities. In their opinion, this catastrophe may have given rise to the beautiful legends of Sodom and Gomorrah. But again, this is more so a theory rather than an absolute fact. People within cities, that's sinful or not? As we said prior, with so little information about the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, it is truly difficult to draw conclusions about their population. The Bible says that they had the collective name of Canaanites, but even this name is conditional and simply means inhabitants of Canaan. And various sources say that different nationalities lived on this territory either simultaneously in one period of time or replacing each other. Although the Canaanites had a lot in common, at least in terms of appearance and even mentality. It can be judged by the preserved sculptural and artistic images discovered by archaeologists. Majority of the townspeople in the previously clearly defined geographical area are listed as, based on drawings, men who were appearing naked in each other's company. Because, to put it simply, they were so sinful that they were aroused by each other's bodies and provoked each other to actions. But it's not what should catch one's attention. It's more important to draw conclusions based off of another indication. The local population were unfriendly to strangers. We also can say that their occupation was agriculture, in particular viticulture and also winemaking. The land in the vicinity of Sodom is characterized as fertile and very suitable for farming. As for the social structure, Sodom was the center of an association of 5 city-states, which was common organization-wise back then, and these city-states were ruled by their own king. Well, according to the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah were wiped off the face of the earth for the unforgivable sinfulness of their inhabitants. But despite these sins, the nature of them is not precisely specified. The Old Testament, Tanakh, mentions an attempt by men of Sodom to rape Lot's guests, originally angels who took the form of handsome young men. In the New Testament, they are accused of fornication and going after other flesh. Based on this, it is most often believed that the biggest sin of the inhabitants of the 2 cities was unnatural from the biblical point of view, sexual behavior. But in general, both sources do not clearly state the sins for which the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were sentenced to complete destruction. But the story of Lot's guests hints that their fornication was indeed of a truly perverted nature. Questionable moments. Of course, there are a lot of them since the real proven facts in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah are simply way too few. However, if you read them carefully, you can notice a lot of bizarre and even hideous things in the sources. Chances are you didn't know about either all of them or most of them. Let's check it out together. 1. For instance, the assumption that women in the city of Gomorrah had unnatural sexual inclinations is pure speculation. There is nothing like that in the Bible, and Gomorrah is mentioned all the time along with Sodom, that being they sinned in the same exact way within 2 cities. 2. The main focus of Bible is on the higher justice system, which was non-selective, and it raises questions. Well, only men are represented as sinners in Sodom, but the fire and brimstone destroyed everyone, men, women, and small children, who were certainly not involved in sexual deviations. 3. Only Lot and his daughters escaped from Sodom, but even here it is known that Lot also had sons-in-law, husbands and fiancés of his daughters. It turns out that the righteous and exemplary man himself found at least 2 men in the sinful city whom he considered worthy of being related to them in such a way that definitely raises questions. 4. And finally, there were of course more than 2 cities destroyed. Sodom was the center of a union of not even 2 but 5 cities within the area, and all of them were destroyed. Strabo speaks of as many as 13 settlements there. And speaking of fornication, some people are well aware of what righteous Lot and his daughters did in the cave after being rescued from Sodom. For this, he was rewarded with the right to become the forefather of 2 new peoples, from each of the sons and grandsons born as a result. But that's a different story. You were watching Flip Side of History, and if you enjoyed it and it made you even more interested in history and Bible and made you raise unusual questions, then do not hesitate and subscribe to the channel. And for now, see you in upcoming episodes.